In this episode, I'll be talking with a jazz drumming giant, Mr. Jeff Tain Watts. A 7-time Grammy-winning musician, Jeff has over 170 recordings to his name, including 11 as a leader. Jeff is a consummate musician, and I'm happy that he can share his thoughts with us today. This series was conducted in the spring of 2020 via Instagram, and the audio and video quality do reflect that format. However, the words and insights of these guests are still priceless.
All right, so plug me in. What's happening? What's up, cool?
Hey, yeah.
Yeah.
You got a lot of people there. You got Will Lee watching. You got a whole bunch of people from all over the place.
Fancy.
Jeremy, Stacy, some other people. This is
go
Jeff
ahead.
Tain Watts.
What's happening, people?
Yeah, so I always say a little bit about everybody I'm talking to. Jeff Tain Watts is a 7-time, is that right? 7-time Grammy-winning musician.
For real. The seventh one is kind of a grope. But,
oh, you should get the 7. So
I'll take it. I'll take it.
He's got over 170 recordings to his name, including 11 recordings as a leader. 11.
Yeah, boy.
All you drummers who aren't making records, you only have 10 more to go if you started your first.
I'm telling you. All kind of money to lose. You can lose all kind.
All right, so just for background, you went to conservatory in Pittsburgh, right? Or you're from Pittsburgh and you went to conservatory and you grew up playing some classical music, orchestral music, right?
That's all true. Yeah. I was trained as a classical percussionist, mainly a timpanist, and ended up going to Duquesne University and studying with people in the Pittsburgh Symphony. Yep.
That's so heavy. And did that feel like it was that a challenging path at that time? I mean, to be doing that?
I mean, I didn't really, the more I got into it, it seemed like the end game was going to be a little tricky, but that's the road that presented itself to me, and it was fun. I mean, just all of my activities in high school and in college, it was all orchestra and band and percussion ensemble, and I was getting into the jazz band and also 20th century like new music and all kind of stuff with crazy notation and
wow,
the whole percussion world, and it was just I got exposed to a lot of things by some great teachers.
And but at this time you were listening to all kinds of music, right? Because you got such a wide musical taste. And what's some of the music you were listening to back then, even in high school, that was really resonating with you, other than this music that you were studying and working on?
I grew up with R&B radio, James Brown and Funky Meters and P-Funk and Earth, Wind and Fire, things like that. I'll say when I got in the middle of my high school days, my brother James, he used to work at a college record store called Flo's Records down by the University of Pittsburgh. And so he started bringing home 70s fusion recordings. So if my birthday would pass, he would come home with Billy Cobham Spectrum, or come home with like Herbie Hancock Thrust or Headhunters, and so I really got into that, and the Mahavishnu Orchestra and Chick Corea's Return to Forever and things like that. He just thought that with my classical background and trying to play drum set also, that the music would be a little more challenging. And so I was kind of into all that. And but then at the same time, I guess when I got out of high school, I decided to go to Duquesne University, and I was an applied percussion major, and I was also in the Pittsburgh Youth Symphony with like a lot of grad students from Carnegie Mellon and Duquesne University and other schools, and just to round out my game, I was pursuing traditional jazz. I was like, what is it? Somehow I had like no true idea other than seeing Buddy Rich on the Tonight Show or something like that,
So let me get this right. You didn't really get into jazz until you got into university.
Yeah. So that's I'll say I really found out who Bird was and Art Blakey was and like I'll say in 1977, 1978, and then yeah, like maybe like 3 years later, I was starting to do stuff with Wynton. Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, that's I. In one sense, I was going to say there's hope for the rest of us, but in the other sense, if you went from 3 years just figuring out who Bird was and then playing on those records the way that you did 3 years later, maybe it's time to quit.
Nah, you know what you're doing, but yeah, yeah, it was just something so that if somebody, that was also in that era. You had your fusion thing, and then you also had, you know, a lot of the studio cats were getting record deals, and just that whole studio musician mentality, working on soundtracks and trying to be versatile and things like that. So I just really what brought me into the straight ahead thing was if somebody called me for a gig or a recording like that, I just didn't want it to suck too bad. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
But then obviously it became a deep love, and you got immersed and you were on the road. How much road time were you guys doing with the quartet, the quintet, when you and and went and started out?
Yeah. So I guess I moved to New York in the spring of 1982. Branford Marsalis put the first band together, and he had scouted Kenny Kirkland in New York, and he remembered me from college and things like that, and put the band together. Um, Man, we got on the road. When we first went on the road, it was very basic, and it was really like kind of a jazzy life for a minute. We were like in a van, two people in a room, Holiday Inns and stuff like that. And I would say like close to 200 dates a year or something like that. It felt like we went to Europe twice a year for at least 3 weeks to a month each time. We would go to Japan once a year. When we really, really tour the states. Really do. That's when they had all the cool jazz festivals in the summer. We would hit all those all over the place. Playboy Jazz Festival. But yeah, but we were very, very busy, and everything really picked up after the first year. I guess Wynton really established the group, and then he got his thing where he was the first guy to get a classical Grammy and a jazz
Yeah.
Grammy. So then everything was, it was kind of like doing a pop gig, but you're playing jazz, just as far as how we were treated and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I ask these questions not to rehash facts, but to help understand how you developed and how, because obviously all the great bands and all the great players benefited from a lot of time together on the road. When you think about the Miles band and all those bands,
Hmm.
and you had a long relationship with this piece, especially people like Kenny Kirkland,
Hmm.
and you spent a lot of time together on the road playing music together, especially in those early years, right?
Yep.
A lot
Yeah.
of time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, most of the year, probably close to 200 dates a year. It felt like that. But I didn't know anything else, and I was just really happy to be able to feed myself playing music. You know,
Yeah,
because I didn't really have a lot of professional musicians in my family. I didn't really know how it worked, and my family didn't know how it worked, and they were, but they always let me know, like, if this music thing doesn't work out, you can always come back home and get a job and do some stuff.
wow.
But it just, yeah. So I mean, it was really unknown to me what was actually going to happen. So I just decided I'm just going to ride this horse as long as I can.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you and you developed this, and then that band developed such a sound, and I think, I mean, a lot of those records are go-to records, and the way you play is a big part of them. And I'd be remiss if I didn't cite Black Codes as a desert island record for almost every jazz musician today.
That's a good one. A lot of things came together for that. It was like just a good period for the band. Um, I guess we had spent the first couple of records like finding out what we could do, and and trying to digest different possibilities and extensions for traditional jazz, I guess, acoustic jazz. So we were listening to a lot of Miles Davis, a lot of Coltrane, a lot of Ornette Coleman, and then more Monk started coming to the game and stuff like that. And but then everybody had ideas about how they wanted to do stuff, and Kenny Kirkland brought his sensibility, and Wynton being a virtuoso, and Branford's just a freak, and he can just hear anything and internalize. He knows a lot of really specific information, but he also has the ability to just throw that all away and just internalize stuff really on a natural level, on a really pure level. So that's all of that is really healthy to be around.
And I know we
Yeah.
talked about this a little back in January. I was kind of picking your
Yeah.
brain in between some takes, but these complicated things you played on those records and stuff that flips back and forth. I think I'd ask you then, and I'd love it if you rehash again now about how that came to be. Some of that complex stuff, and I think you said you played some of it in its rough version, and then you went out and played it live a bunch.
The Black Host from the Underground, definitely that recording is, what do we do? We went in the studio and we did a certain amount of the material, probably like 2/3 of the material. We played it, and some of that stuff is actually on the recording. But it's like, Wynton had a cool budget, and he liked to have things exactly how he wanted to have them. So we just took a break and actually just went out and played the stuff for like a month,
Oh,
and
that's the
and came
best.
back. Yeah.
Yeah, and so when you guys were putting this together, was he open? Did it feel like a family? Were you all interjecting ideas about stuff like maybe this or maybe that? And
Yeah, I'll say that. I mean, it was like, on one level, once it got rolling, it's something that got a lot of attention, and we were always on television, always on some special or something like that, or some talk show. But on another level, it was like the first band that you get in, or something like that. It's a lot of word of mouth for musicians, just a really natural, just a bunch of guys getting together and trying to play and trying to have a good band, you know. So a lot of listening to stuff. Kenny Kirkland was slightly older than the rest of us, and he was already like a veteran of the scene, so his experience helped a lot, you know. And I don't know, it's a lot of things came together, but I'm just very fortunate to come to New York with people, basically a whole bunch of unicorns. I like to say, you
yeah,
know, it's like a lot of people would be satisfied to have like an extended relationship with one or two of these people in their career and stuff like that. But I was, just really lucky to be around them, and also just because they were like really cool people.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And by this time, you guys were checking out a lot of music, and I feel like you and Kenny especially started. And maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like you started exploring deeper journey into rhythm together, because it sure felt like you two were both in that and pushing it further and further. Do you think that was a conscious thing? Would you talk about it and the way that rhythm worked? And
Yeah, yeah, we would talk about it. He just liked things to be very definite, whether it's a groove or swinging. Um, because I guess we were trying to keep that tradition going, and I guess when I address the swing thing, I'm trying to make it so that it's not like a museum piece or something old. That it's just something that's from a dance that can be fresh now if you play it like you like it. you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
well, dance is, man, that's such a appropriate word for the way that you play, because
Yeah.
I certainly feel it, and I feel all that energy, and I feel like you've taken the playing of the people who came before, and you really made it your own. And I know I said that to you before. I feel the influence of Elvin, and I feel the influence of Tony, and the influence of Max. But the way that you figured out your own way to make, especially the triplet vibe. And I know I asked you about this, and I'd love you to talk a little bit more about the triplet and where you feel the triplet and your flexibility with it. Was it anything you ever worked on consciously about concepts about like I'm going to stretch this out or I'm going to make this a certain way? Because you have all those. You're such a melting pot of all this rhythmic and drumming history.
Well, I guess a process that kind of started like right before I got to New York, and it continued, and I'm still kind of messing with it. I'm always trying to get like a blend of what I might say is like a Euro concept of polyrhythm, like like purely putting 5 beats in the space of four or 7 beats in that space, or being very familiar with that, and trying to be familiar with like kind of a Indian or Arabic vibe that's more linear. And then but then the thing that you're talking about, the whole the triplet vibe and the stretching of that, I kind of got into that more trying to understand Afro-Cuban music. And Kenny Kirkland, he was really like a proponent of that. Working in the Fort Apache band and working with a lot of people, and his association with the great Don Elias. And so Kenny was also a good drummer. He had a pocket, and he had kind of an Elvin style that he would play on swing. And so I mean, I just try to, I'm trying with rhythm. I'm trying to be as familiar with rhythm as pianists or can be with harmony. So I like to use rhythm to evoke emotion. Sometimes I'll take rhythmic devices and I'll put them in tunes, but I try to have an organic reason for the polyrhythm or the metric modulation and things like that. I try to have some kind of organic reason for it, so it's not just like a gimmick. I'll use it if, like, sometimes you'll write a piece of music will sound best at a certain tempo.
You said all this stuff and you looked great saying it, but after a while we couldn't see you. We couldn't hear you.
Okay, yeah,
Because somebody said he doesn't want to give away the secrets.
that's right. My
So
phone has a filter for that. Yeah.
I think we heard you saying about writing for. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to backtrack some. You talked about
Okay.
writing for music, and you didn't want to. You wanted to use it in a musical way. These rhythmic devices, and then we
Hmm.
lost you. So can you pick
Okay.
up?
All right. Yeah, I kind of said that I try to have an organic reason for any type of device that I use for any kind of modulation and things like that. And I like to be well versed enough that I could get from any tempo to any other tempo. I'll have some kind of bridge or whatever. And so I like to equate it with harmony. And I cited Wayne Shorter as an example of someone that knows so much harmony that they almost don't even have to play harmony. It's like he knows his environment so well that he can get from point A to point B and resolve things really coolly and stuff like that. But I don't know. Just but a lot of what I deal with now is that combination of a like an Afro aesthetic and kind of a nerdy linear, you know, Zappa type of polyrhythm thing or whatever.
But in this era of, and I think we're getting past it now, but the era of math jazz, I will
Hmm.
say that your music never sounds like math jazz to me. And I know that I think you have an aversion to that. I certainly have an aversion to it. People counting because they can and playing some tricky stuff that doesn't necessarily feel great. And I always found that your rhythms are meant as motif and tied with harmony. And I think that's really admirable. And I also want to point out that I think your writing it was always great, and it's growing and growing. And I know you work really hard on it. You know,
Hmm.
and am I correct in saying that you're kind of a motivic writer, that you write you write from motif ideas and develop those ideas?
Yeah. I try to do that. A percentage of that vibe I get from listening to Monk, I guess. Where did I
Yeah,
cut off?
you were talking about some of this comes from a monk and lyrical ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I get inspiration from almost anything, and also, I'm from just growing up with the stuff I listen to and good popular music and things like that. I'm more and more conscious of presentation, and I'll have things in there like hooks and things like that, or things to catch the ear, keep things to keep people engaged, so that whenever things become abstract, that people are inspired to follow me. That's a
Mm,
yeah.
yeah. And another thing that I've experienced from you, certainly as a leader, but also as a player, is you're a very giving player. I think that is as much of a tour de force as you are, and as complex as things can be. You're inclusive. You're incredibly inclusive, and that speaks a lot. You know.
I guess one of the main differences between the only difference between me doing your gig and me doing my gig is that maybe I probably write more of the music for my gig or whatever. But once I prepare the music and I install the music, then I'm in this support mode, and I'm just trying to maximize what we have with a group of people playing together. And I'll tell you a story that concerns like rhythm and musicality. I'll say that. But I was working with a gentleman that you knew, that was also an influence on my writing and presentation, and that's Don Gronick. And so I was working with him at the old Sweet Basil Club, and it was a band with Randy Brecker and Ron Carter and Joe Lovano. And so we are playing, and so this was at a time when I'm really into this shifting everything, and I'll hear a rhythm, and the rhythm will imply a linear version of the rhythm, and the rhythm will imply like a pure polyrhythmic version of the rhythm, and whatever. Just I don't know. Just I was really experimenting with time, and so every rhythm that I would hear, I was like kind of dissecting them and trying to. Sometimes I've tried to do that, or I'll hear a rhythm and I'll try to think of what is the opposite of this, so that it fits together like a grid, and assimilates conversation. Just a lot of concept things. And so I was playing behind Ron Carter, and so his solo came, and so I took out the brushes, and I'm like slicing and dicing and this stuff, and I think I'm being musical, but I'm really just like, sometimes just because you can play something doesn't mean that it's the thing to do. It's like what we're talking about. And so after the set, Ron was like, "Man, hey man, I really dig what you're doing, man. But I'm just gonna ask you one thing." He's gonna kick my ass. "Yeah, I'm just gonna ask you one thing." He said, "Do what you're doing, but use what you're doing to help me do what I'm trying to do. Doobie doobie do." And so I just kind of live by that, because there's so much in contained in function. You know, Rhythm section player. There's always something that you can do. There's always a hipper way to orchestrate something on the drums, on the keyboard, whatever, range, and you're trying to be conscious of your environment. You're trying to be conscious of other people's energy, and whatever. But just through trying to help, um, that helps me out a lot. You know.
That's really smart, and thank you for sharing that with with us. I mean, we all have stories like that, and trying to grow. If you don't have a story like that, then you probably haven't grown.
Yeah. Now I'll tell you. I'll tell you something else. It's kind of like and a percentage of that I get from Kenny Kirkland because it's like, he would try not to jazz up people's music or change it. Like if you wrote a major triad, he's trying to, instead of his energy going into what can I slip in on this major triad, he's like, what part of the piano can I play it in and voice this so it frames the arrangement? What weight? How do I, should I play it stronger on the bridge or whatever and stuff like that. And I think that's more of a challenge than seeing what you can add. And so with students and with bands and stuff like that, just in general, I just encourage like whatever's on the paper, like really give that a chance. Play the paper until it runs out, until you have nowhere else to go. You know what I mean? It's like what you're presented with. There's always a way to interpret it, and 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 it's a great challenge to just play something very very simple, but with meaning and feeling and things like that. You know, and like you're talking about this math jazz, or people playing stuff to show how what geniuses they are. Um, you know, that's a thing. That's one thing that can be negative about jazz, is that people can get caught up in what they're doing. So they might be performing some music and playing it for some people, and maybe you're in the audience and you don't know that much about jazz, and so somebody's explaining, well, yeah, see what they're doing here, they're doing this and they're doing that, and blah blah blah. Now I'm just in this frame of mind where your delivery system should be so cool that nobody cares about the specifics of what you're doing. You know what I mean? It's like so cool that it's all coming through and it's all real and it's all true. And
Yeah.
I, yeah, I just want to humanize all this stuff and have a true reason for it. Then another quick Kenny Kirkland story is that we were when we were doing the Tonight Show, we lived together in a two-family house, like on the West Side in LA. And one day, I just remember him. He was playing a blues. He was playing along with Ray Charles record, and Ray Charles was playing this blues. It might be called honky tonk. It might be called something else, but it's kind of like ding 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 ding.
Was it the Rage Rockhouse, right?
Maybe that's Ray's Rockhouse. That's what that
Yeah.
is, right? He played with this thing for like 2 hours, man. Where many people in a jazzy head, they would reduce that to the actual information that's there. Not the subtext, which is all this stuff of how he's making this thing feel. They say, oh, he's just playing this chord, and it's that's simple, man. I can do that, and blah blah. But Kenny Kirkland was really into the how he's doing it. How's he making the piano do makes you feel like this, and makes the drummer want to do this, and all that stuff. That's important.
That's great. That's
Yeah,
gold.
yeah.
And I think that's what makes you a great accompanist. And I've gotten to hear more and more of you playing with various people. And I just heard you at the Vanguard with Kenny Barron and
Woo.
Buster Williams, and you play differently there than you did with other people. I mean, you're still yourself, but you were very inclusive of Kenny Barron and that trio, and then when I saw you, it was a big contrast to seeing you play at Sweet Basil with Kenny Garrett, where it was just like
Yeah,
that. I remember that as one of the loudest jazz gigs I've ever been to.
I'm
It was
sure it was.
fantastic. But
No.
and, do you have an overview about your take on accompanying? Does it go along with the same ideology about music and giving yourself to music? You know, your long relationship with Branford and playing with Michael Brecker and ideas about how you approach accompanying, and or is it just using your ears? Or
It's mainly using your ears, you know. And there's a certain amount that you can accomplish in the moment. And for me, over the years, there's a certain amount that I have to spend time with people, you know, because I like to find something. I don't like to go on automatic, you know. I like to really try to find something that really works with whoever I'm playing with, you know, really works with their voice. And then you also always have like that, you know, dichotomy of, you know, support and painting in broad strokes and you know, just supporting, putting people on your back. And you know, you have that, but then with a lot of improvised music, you have an obligation to, sometimes with certain music, you have an obligation to kind of provoke the situation and stimulate. You know, a lot of people they'll call me because they want that foot in
they
their
want the
ass, or
fire.
that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They want somebody 20 years older than them to just hand them their ass, which is
Which
what
is
you
a
do so
healthy.
very well.
It's a healthy thing, you know. But yeah, you know, this is just I don't know. I'm just gonna keep going and and try to improve and make it better for people and have it more reflect more and more like how I feel about the world and how I am as a person and things like that. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
beautiful. And you know, another record that was an incredible record for me, and where I really got to hear after digesting all that Wynton Marsalis music was hearing Trio GP, because I got to hear you and the judge Milt Hinton just playing so
Mhm.
simply together, and where you would put stuff. And had you played with him much before? Because the way that you put things with him in a line was different than obviously you did with other bass players that came before. Or was it just listening to him for years?
You know what? I man, I had only the slightest idea of who Milt Hinton was when I got to the studio. It's really bizarre. And Branford's like, "Yeah, we're gonna do this thing with Milt Hinton. Come on, you got to do it." All right, I'm cool. I'm cool. So whenever he called me for it, I was, you know, I guess, you know, Branford and Kenny, they had started working with Sting, and so I was still in Wynton's quartet with Marcus Roberts and Robert Hurst. And you know, so I had to actually get out of some gigs with Wynton to do it. I think he was playing in Washington or something like that. And I think that Ben Riley or Roy Haynes was my sub. You know, I used to like to send like one of the troop be my sub, so it would be like a, you know, positive things for everybody. And so yeah, but I just got in the studio, man. I'm like, okay, here he is. But it just took like about 5 minutes, and I'm like, oh, this is what's happening. Oh my God, it's like a beastie monster, freak musician, you know, just all around, just bad MF. I'm like, man, this is
Yeah.
incredible, you know. And then I guess it probably happens mostly with traditional jazz or the traditional R&B or even rock. But just when you have the chance to play with one of those real dudes, you know, it's like you practice your stuff, and then you know you listen to these records, and you're like, man, if I ever get to play with this dude, I want to see how this thing works with them, and how that thing's gonna, you know, because I know that their thing is really right. And you know, that's the feeling I got with him. I'm like, man, this is a really deep, you know, swinging dude, like really swinging dude. He's not just trying to do it. He's got the sound. He's got the approach. All I have to do is not mess it up. But you know, yeah, I learned so much, and he was really sweet and giving, and no hierarchy or pretension or anything like that. And a lot of the great musicians, as you know, they strive to meet you on your level and not have a vibe and not be jive and things like that. And that's what he was, man. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and you broke out the backward swing on him.
that was the premiere of the backwards.
That's right. That's what I thought. I was going to ask if that was the premiere of the backward swing because I think it was the
It was
famous
the
Tain
backwards.
backward swing.
Yep. And then and then it kind of just that I was able to get it off in the company of somebody like a legend like that. It kind of validated it a little bit. I'm like, let me see if I can get to slide this 3 passes here. I'm just gonna drop it right here, and then he just stayed where he was at,
Oh
and I,
yeah.
and I was able to do it. You know, but I thought about the backward swing, which for your listeners is just it's like taking the information that you would play with the swing on the normal part of the beat and just moving over. I guess I moved all the information from the upbeat to the from the downbeat to the upbeat.
Yeah.
So the quarter note pulse is actually on the upbeat and whatever, and just trying to give the illusion that the time flips over and things like that.
Yeah.
I got into it for a couple reasons. I used to hear Harvey Mason kind of play a backwards kind of funk. Like he was, he'll like flip it
Yeah.
and he'll
Yeah.
stay there. And so like I was like, wow, what would that be like with swing? And then also, I hear like you'll hear on certain Brazilian records the drummer might play an introduction and you'll feel like the one is going to be in a certain place, but then it ends up being in a whole nother place, and it's like just by what part of the kit he's using at a particular time, it kind of pulls you in a certain direction, but then you're in another direction, and yeah, but that's a keeper. It's kind of like a little cut and paste. Yeah,
Yeah. But it doesn't feel again. It doesn't feel like cut and paste. So,
yeah,
it really felt natural. And you probably did that, and he's like, "Oh, this kid."
exactly. I'm never
But
doing
you
this
weren't.
again.
You were gonna knock him off his horse. He was so solid. That and
Yeah.
that record still stands up to me as one of the great records. I really feel like it.
The one of the things I'm most proud about with that is that I guess at a certain point on the recording they played Three Little Words,
Yeah.
and it ended up being a duo. But Branford really wanted me to play some brushes on it, and I probably should have. But once I saw him doing his kind of plucking technique,
Oof.
I
Yeah.
really felt like it was better for me to lay out so that it wasn't obscured, so people could hear how much of that was really coming from the bass.
Mm.
And I'm very, very happy I did that because people were able to hear that. And
Yeah.
it seems like a lot more guys are able to add that to the repertoire and
Yeah.
expose some people. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have we talked about this, you being inclusive, and you've always been so gracious to younger musicians. I remember my first interactions with you. You didn't know me. You were always welcoming and gracious, and I use you as an example to other people I talk to about music. I'm like, if this guy can be cool and welcoming and accepting, then that's the benchmark for how you need to treat other people because you never know. And
Yeah. Yeah. You never know, man. You got to be. I mean, it's music, man. It's like once we're all at the table, it's like, we got to have dinner. It's
yes,
like you got to be cool. We got to, I guess like I said before, it's like the main goal is to maximize what you can do with a group of people.
yeah,
It should be greater than the sum of the parts and all those cliches and things like that. But then, I've had Ron Carter be gracious to me, and McCoy Tyner to treat me like one of his old friends, and Ellis Marsalis, and so many cat George Cables, and so many cats. You know, yeah, everybody. Art Blakey is crazy. Elvin Jones. They would always Max Roach. They would just meet me on their level. I would be starstruck. Once I went to see Elvin Jones at the Blue Note, and there's a picture I post of me and Elvin, like when his birthday comes around. I'm like, hey, look, it's me and Elvin. Look, hi, I was with Elvin. Look, yeah, whatever. But it's like I went to see his band, and then I went to the dressing room. And I was like, man, I got to get some pictures, man. So I think James Williams was in the band at the time, and he took the pictures. And I went to take the first picture, and I was just like,
Oh no, you're frozen. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
I was really, really cheesing hard. I was just like, ah. And he was like, come on, man. One like two dudes, man. Come on, man. Blah, blah, blah. And then he was like, it's cool. We're already cool. You don't have to do all that. Let's get down. Let's just be cool. You know,
That's great.
amazing.
That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Now we have this giant jazz education system happening in the U.S. now, and they're turning out students really fast, and I think that's great because it makes more ears out there in the world, and we have a lot of students who can play a whole bunch of stuff, but it doesn't always result in musicality. And what do you think? What advice would you give to students and educators to help us to have this system create more music? You know?
Man, oh man. Yeah, it's kind of deep because I guess a lot of these really virtuosos of the day, it's like you can go through your school music program and you can go to all these camps and go to the Brubeck camp and go to Banff and go to blah 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 and then go to the conservatory and get your fellowship and you can do all this stuff now without ever having to play in a really stinky bar with for people that worked all day that don't care how brilliant you are. It's like, can you touch me with something? Can you reach me?
Mm.
Help me get down. I'm trying to set this up. I got this woman here. I'm trying to hook this up. I'm trying to whatever. Just like human stuff. It's like now, yeah. I mean, cats can go through their whole career and get a record deal, but they haven't had to really be in the trenches like playing for people. I think I don't know. That made a difference for me because that vibe was already in my head just from growing up in Pittsburgh. It's like, whatever it was, you had to like play it or be really trying to play it, or people would talk about you. It's like, people that were non-musicians, they're like, are you gonna get down or what? It's like, and that's what I mean about like, I'll have students, and I'm like, okay, let's all right, play some beats, and let's play some Latin stuff, Afro-Cuban stuff. All right, let's play some swing. And sometimes it feels like it's an assignment, and I'm like, just play it like you like it. Play it like it's that trap track that you just copped or whatever. Play it like that, whatever, the snarky puppy thing or whatever that you really dig, that you really want to do. But what point am I making anyway? I don't even know. Where
Well,
where am I?
I think you're talking about heart, playing with heart and connecting with people and
Yeah.
reaching people.
Yes. Yeah. That's the people who are in the room with you. Um. But just growing up in Pittsburgh, though, that like the blues is more than a sometimes 12 bar progression. Just that that the blues is more than just like a 12 bar cycle or whatever. That you when you go in there like, I mean, even if you're playing jazzy blues, you still got to play the blues. You still got to play it like you're playing with John Lee Hooker. That that vibration. It has to resonate with that soul and spirituality and things like that, and that aspiration of pulling everybody in the room together. We can all agree that we love some blues. Let's get down. Come on. It's I don't know. That's, a lot of that stuff was just kind of like a given. But
Right.
how do you inspire jazz? What do you think? What do you think you can do to jazz education to stimulate that?
What do man, I don't know. I was going to
That's
say,
cool.
this thing about showing people the music that has heart,
Yeah,
and connecting.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I used to joke around like they should have a thing where you know you're a jury or something. You got to play in a slightly dangerous club. Once a month. There should be a field trip where you go somewhere, you almost get stabbed, and you go in there. If you play the wrong thing, somebody's gonna throw something at you, and you have to learn how to deal with different types of people. Not be isolated or insular or whatever. Um, I find occasionally that some of the younger musicians, it's like that they kind of play for each other, and not so much for the room. Everybody's been practicing and working on their licks that they heard on this record or that record, and this is their time to try it out. And all their friends come and they come check it out. Oh, he did the thing. Yeah, yeah. And I'm like, what's going on? What's happening? You know, and like everybody else in the room was like, when are y'all, we're naked. I thought we were going to get down. What happened? Oh, no. But I don't know.
Man, that's right on. Thank you so much for joining me today, and from the sanctuary.
That's
Jeff
right.
Tain Watts, you can check out more about him at tainish.com. And he's got a beautiful studio there. If you want Jeff Tain Watts on tracks, send him an email. And, for the right amount of cash and the right amount of soulfulness, you might get some Jeff Tain Watts. Especially in this Corona time, the cash counts.
It's not that hard.
Thank you so much. Thanks for
Thank
sharing
you for
yourself with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. Thanks for being the great musician and that you are and enabling a lot of great things to happen. And I look forward to the next time.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for joining me for this episode of The Right Key. If you enjoyed the episode, there's a lot more coming. Please click the subscribe and like buttons below. If you want to know more about me or our guests, you can find lots of information in the link just below the video. See you next time.